sure that you are on mute, so it will not disrupt the program. But I just hope you've got a drink, cup of tea, or some fizzy drink or something sweet, that you are relaxed and sat down to basically dive into the program, because today we are going to get to know a little bit more about how to find the right partner, which I'm very excited. Joe, how you here?
Yes, I'm here.
Awesome, awesome. So, Joe, I've read a little bit about you, which I will basically present to our audience today. And I got some questions as well to get to know you a little bit more. So basically, you are based in the US, right?
That's correct.
In which, can you tell us where you are exactly?
I live in Huntsville, Alabama.
Oh, right. Okay. And how's the weather like right now? Is it sunny, rain?
Beautiful day, sunshiny day
Awesome.
today.
That's great. Awesome. I like to hear that because in England as well, it's nice. And I think tomorrow is going to be even more hot. So it's great. We love when the weather is good.
Yes.
Right. So, Joe, you are. So I've read a little bit about you. So I'm just gonna basically speak it out loud now, and just nod and let me know if that's correct. So, Joe, you are an ordained Seventh day Adventist minister. You are a licensed marriage and family therapist, and you specialize in working with married couples, and you've got an extensive experience of over 20 years. You also have a book which is entitled Sizzle Mindset: Seven Secrets to Keep the Passion Alive in Your Marriage. You have two master's degree. You are a father of five. Can you tell us what's the age range there?
Oh, from 28 to 14.
Wow. Indeed. Very
Yeah.
busy man, I guess.
Yes. I've been parenting a long time.
Wow, that's great. That's great. And one thing that made me smile about, reading about your biography was that you are a singer and songwriter. I'm very passionate about music as well.
Oh, wow.
And you are author and speaker.
Yes,
So,
yes.
yeah. So, welcome, Joe.
Thank you. Thank you. Y'all have to look out for my new album coming out soon.
Oh, you have an album coming out.
Yep, keep your ears open.
Okay, well, we'll keep in touch. Definitely, we want to hear a little bit more. Maybe we'll have a special session towards the end of.
Okay, great. Great.
All right, okay. So, Joe, I would like to know you a little bit more on a personal level, because obviously we've read about your work as a minister and as a professional therapist. But I want to know you a little bit more on a personal level. So I do have a
Yeah.
few questions
Okay.
for you. So are
Sure.
you ready?
I hope
Great.
so. We'll see.
Okay. So, my first question is, are you more of an outdoor or indoor person, and why?
Oh wow, that's really a good question. It's a hard question for me because I think I'm 50-50. I
Okay.
love the outdoors. I'm always working in the yard and building stuff and doing things, but I spend a lot of time inside. I guess working, talking to people is pretty much inside. So
Yeah.
um, I think I'm 50-50.
Okay. That's good. That's good to know. I think that's being well balanced. Because I'm on the edge of being more of an outdoor person right now,
Okay.
especially with the
Okay.
whole pandemic. I'm spending
Yes.
as much time outside.
Yes.
That's great. Okay. So the second question is, what is your favorite verse, quote, proverb, or saying?
Hmm. Probably my favorite verse in the Bible quote is "I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me." That's probably been my most quoted verse throughout my life.
Yeah.
I'm always been a big dreamer, and so I claim the promises of God that I can achieve my dreams. So I think it was 8 years old when I decided I wanted to swim, even though I had no swimming lessons. And thank God for His mercy and His grace and a lifeguard. But
Yeah.
I believe I can do all things through Christ
Amen.
who strengthens me.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's the positivity we need nowadays. Definitely. Right. And my last question would be, what is the most valuable lesson that you've learned throughout this pandemic?
The most valuable lesson that I've learned throughout this pandemic. Um, I suppose it's just trust God. Um, I mean, we have no control. You can wear your mask and your gloves and sanitize and wash your hands for 20 seconds, which is all very important. Stay separated from everybody else as much as possible. But at the end of the day, you got to trust God that He's going to take care of you. And in the event you do get this virus, you got to trust God through it. So I think ultimately the lesson I've learned, and we don't know where this is going and how it's going to go out. At the end of the day, you just have to trust God. So that's kind of what I've learned in this pandemic. God is in control, and our lives are in His hands, and so we have nothing to fear except that we forget how He has led us in the past. That's another one of my favorite quotes as well.
That's right. That's right. Thank you. I think a lot of us share basically the same sentiment, the same thoughts, that God is in control. But without any further ado, I know that you have a wonderful presentation for us regarding the topic about finding the right mate. So I'm going to hand over to you right now. But just to let the audience know, we will have a session where we will be able to ask Joe our questions, which will be obviously after his presentation and towards the end. But I really want it to be a discussion because we are here to find out, and I want to find out. So it's all yours now.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you,
Okay.
Amaryllis. It's again my privilege and a blessing to have been invited to be with you guys and to share on this very important topic, how to find the right mate. It was very interesting as I was putting this together. I pulled out some of my old papers and reached back to the year 2000. Many of you may not have been born who's listening, I don't know. But at that time in my life, I was single. I had been married and my marriage had ended. And I found myself over the singles ministry at First Church here in Huntsville. And there was a singles conference. I remember at the turn of the century. And they asked me to do this seminar, how to find the right mate. So when I went in my file cabinet, pulled it out, I dusted it off. I was like, wow, this goes way back to my single days. And so it's really a privilege and a blessing to 20 years later. Now I was actually didn't know it at the time, but within 6 months of that conference, I would get married. And it was interesting. And so now I've been married for 20 years to my dear Claudia, and it's been a blessing. So now I have 20 years of experience to add on top of the previous material. But most of all today, I don't plan to be here with you guys for in presenting straight, just talking for another 30 minutes or so, more than that. I really do want to open the floor for questions and comments so that we can have a dialogue, like you said, Amaryllis. I think that's a great thing. So to begin, let's get a little overview of what we're talking about today. The 7 topics I have that I want to go through, like I said, fairly quickly, are: number 1, are you ready for marriage? Number 2, what are the characteristics of a suitable partner? Number 3, where is he? Where is she? Number 4, attraction versus distraction. How to ruin a good thing. Number 5, 2 dates or less. Number 6, what are your marriage expectations? And number 7, finding the right mate or cultivating a healthy relationship. So let's dive right into number one. Are you ready for marriage? Did you know that marriage requires maturity? You know, some people never grow out of me, me, me.
Mm.
So the questions that I have that kind of help to determine whether you have grown out of maturity are, number one, are you content in your singleness? Um, you may or may not ever get married. Is that okay with you? Are you okay with your life as it is now? I would suggest that if you aren't okay with your life now, you won't be okay with your life when you get married. Happiness is something that is an individual thing. You must know how to be happy. You must know how to make yourself happy. Too often, we look to other people to make us feel the way we want to feel. And that's a mistake because your spouse is not responsible for how you feel. You are. And so if you've learned how to make yourself happy, you've learned how to be content, you've learned how to enjoy and live your life to the fullest, you will make a wonderful spouse. You will make a wonderful partner. And so the first thing I ask anyone thinking about marriage, are you content where you are? Don't be too anxious to get married. Don't think that marriage is going to solve all of your personal misgivings, your personal problems, your personal deficits. In fact, you just take them right into your marriage. And so it's important to look in the mirror and like what you see. It's important to develop yourself, be all that you can be in God. And that's what will make you ready for marriage. Second question to ask. Do you practice self-control? Wow. Self-control is being able to say no to yourself. Can you say no to that third cookie, the fourth one? Practicing self-control. Are you able to go to the gym regularly and exercise? Are you, when you don't feel like getting up and going to work or school, are you able to get up anyway? Do that assignment on time? What about those habits? Are you smoking and drinking and partying? Those are all demonstrations of a lack of self-control. And so it's important for you, if you're to be ready for marriage, is to, of course, no one's perfect, but to at least be able to exercise and demonstrate some self-control. Because when in marriage, man, I tell you, it's challenging, it's stressful. You're dealing with another person, and they have their wishes and desires, they have their faults and their failures. And for too many, the temptation is to fuss and yell and scream and holler when they're frustrated and angry. But that's not self-control. And so it's important to be able to control yourself, because when you get married, when you have kids, there's going to be a lot of things stressing and pushing on you. And if your self-control is weak, you're going to burst because it's that challenging. Life is tough. Some have said that I'd rather be single and lonely than married and miserable, right? And so learning how to control yourself is very important, because that will help you when you get married to keep from being miserable if you've learned how to control yourself while you're single. Is it easy for you to share and give of yourself to others? This is important, because what happens so often in marriage is you have to share. You have to share your stuff, your space. You have to share the floor, and you have to even share your body. Your all of yourself. And if you grew up by yourself, maybe even if you are like grew up a single child, only child, maybe you didn't get the chance to do a lot of sharing. I don't know, but sharing is really, 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 really important to enjoy a happy marriage, you have to be able to open up and give yourself to someone else. Unfortunately, for a lot of people, that's a challenging thing. They find a wall when they get married, and so that's important to be able to share. Have you developed your own identity and live by a set of standards? Um, some people jump right, from their parents' house into marriage. Okay, that's okay. Um, but as long as you have develop your identity, sometimes we just absorb into another person's identity. And while you know it's good to support one another and to lift each other up and um, be there with someone else, it is also important for you to know who you are. I find so many times, and this is really, I think it applies most to women more than men. I think it happens in the case with men that women often find themselves, blending in with the man, and they really have no other identity other than in him. Then they have children, and then what happens is the kids grow up, and the marriage is, um, is going through the going through the motions, and then the woman finds herself not really knowing who she is and what she's all about. And so I think it's important to develop and maintain your identity, the things you like, your career, along the way throughout marriage. So you need to have that before you get married. Who are
Mhm.
you? What do you stand for? What are your principles? And if you come across someone who, um, you get with someone who doesn't have an identity or isn't clear about their values, oh my, that's going to be a challenge for
Mm.
you. I find if you find someone who says yes to everything and agrees, you want to go here, sure. You want to do that, fine. What's your opinion? What do you think? I mean, okay, well, where do you stand? It's very important
Mm.
to have a stance on things. And so to be ready for marriage is to be clear about who you are and what you stand for. Are you able to negotiate when in conflict with others? Or do you have to have your way all the time? Do you know how to get your needs met from others when their needs conflict with yours? Being able to communicate effectively is really important to be ready for marriage. Are you able to listen and wait your turn? Are you able to practice reflective listening? So being able to negotiate is so important. I think when you grow up with a lot of siblings, I had one sibling. I didn't have a lot, but we fought. We did fight. You have an opportunity to really learn how to negotiate and come to an agreement peacefully. That's the hope in the prayer. So negotiation is important. Are you prepared to deal with someone else's flaws? When we
Mm.
when we fall in love, oh, it's wonderful. This person's the best thing since sliced bread, right? But the reality is, they are human and they have flaws. And once you jump over the broom, you're gonna see it. Sometimes you see it before, and a lot of people, I've heard so many people say, I felt like I was baited and they switched on me. Um, it does happen. People can put up a real good show, but you really have to recognize that when you get married, you're going to be dealing with their flaws, their
Mhm.
issues, and so are you prepared for that? So being ready for marriage is being prepared to deal with someone else's flaws. All right, so that's number one. Number two, what are the characteristics of a suitable partner? What do you have in common? What do they enjoy? So it's important when looking for a suitable partner that you find someone who has things in common with you. A lot of times I've heard the saying opposites attract. There is some truth to that, but that's not your best match. Is your opposite. Your best match is someone who has a lot of similar characteristics, similar things in common. I remember when developing my list for what I wanted, I wanted someone who shared my religion and who had some similar cultural and backgrounds that I have. And that was very important. I've seen now in 20 years of marriage how important those commonalities play in the sustenance of your marriage, especially through the up and down times of marriage. You both want children. What about your careers? Are your careers compatible? How do you feel about money? How do you feel about giving? All of these things are really important for couples to be in agreement on, because the more you agree, the less you have to argue about. And so finding someone who you're in agreement with is really important, because then you don't have to get into agreement with them later on. So that's very important. What do we have in common? What do you enjoy? Do you like shopping? Do you like fishing? You said you're an outdoorsy person. Well, if you get a couch potato, Marilyse, you're not going to be very happy. You're going to say, let's go outside. They're going to say, no, let's stay and watch a movie. And they got this big stack of movies,
Oh
I'm like,
dear.
I was, well, if you're a movie buff, you need to marry a movie buff. And y'all can sit
Mm,
there and eat potato chips and watch movie every day.
right.
um, so what do they enjoy? That's important to come find someone in common. Number two, what are the evidences of their character, their strengths and their weaknesses? And so we want to find someone who has a strong character, who's patient, who's kind, who's gentle. You want to find someone who's a hard worker. These are character traits. Someone who's honest. So these are some things that you want to look for, as well as someone who tells lies and is lazy. These are some things that you want to pick up pretty quickly while you're looking for a suitable partner. And when you see those signs of poor character traits, and again, nobody's perfect. We're all in growth and in development. And you're not going to find anybody perfect who's already there. It's just not going to happen. I mean, you're not there. However, there are some red flags that should cue you off about this person. So understanding the character, you see their character from their decisions in life, their history. And so asking historical questions are helpful in understanding some of those things about this person. Who are their family? Who do they associate with? Okay, birds of a feather flock together.
Right.
And so a lot of times we hear about girls picking bad boys, you're going to get some of that in your life. If that's where you're from and you're used to that culture and that's what you see for your life, then maybe that's a common bond that you have. But it's important to really pick someone who has similar background experience that you do. Unfortunately, again, no one has perfect life situation, and it's kind of hard to pick and choose the characteristics of the person you fall in love with, in a sense.
Indeed. Yeah.
But people have various situations and circumstances. Some are orphans; they have no parents, or they
Yeah.
grew up in the foster care system, and you fell in love with them. They have a very horrid background and traumatic life experiences. You fall in love with them, but the reality is that you're going to have to deal with that reality. Of their past, of your past. They have to deal with yours. And so really evaluating who their family are, who their associates are, where they come from is really important to determine how suitable they are for marriage. Do they have dreams? And what are they? Now it's interesting that some people don't have dreams. They don't dream. They pretty much live day to day and have no hopes for the future. And so do you really want to be married to someone like that? Is that you? I hope not. And what are those dreams? That's very important, because I want to be able to support you in your dreams, and so being able to pick someone who has dreams that are compatible with your dreams is very, very important to determine what a suitable partner is. Number three. So where is Mr. Right? Where is Miss Right? Well, I say they are right under your nose. It's amazing where you find your spouse. I just heard the story yesterday of two who fell in love, who well met each other at an internship. They were both doing an internship and found themselves eating lunch together quite often and became friends right there in their internship. So that person can be anywhere. Your next door neighbor, at your job, at church, at the gym, online. I mean, lots of things are going on online with Facebook online and all these other things going on. And then there's also dating sites where that person is. Lots of people are finding each other online these days. And some ask the question: is it okay to find a mate online? And I don't see anything wrong with it. I think you have to be careful online. There's a lot of crooks and schemers out there. But prayerfully, I believe you can find a good mate online. The computer does a pretty good job sometimes picking
Indeed.
someone for you. And so, and also, what another thing I like about the online thing is it gives you an opportunity to kind of learn how to date and figure out about how, learn about people and also about yourself. And so I strongly encourage dating online. But ultimately, where is he or she? Well, you got to ask God to open your eyes and for God to lead and provide that person for you. Again, don't be so desperate that you're, going to go against God. You want to be sure you hear his voice, giving you permission and his blessing on whoever it is you pick. And so you want to go with God wherever you go and pray for his guidance. So that's ultimately where he or she is. All right, number 4, attraction versus distraction. How
Mm-hmm.
to ruin a good thing. So I believe you can find the right person and mess up your relationship by breaking the rules. There are rules of dating. Number one
Right.
is mutual attraction. All right, it's important that there's mutual attraction. Um, Too often, and I'll skip to the last one I have there, which is premature intimacy. Too often we get prematurely intimate with someone, and our attraction is wholly physical, and not otherwise. And that's really a dangerous situation because once you get physically involved with someone, you're not really able to see clearly and really see what we have in common and what we don't, and whether this is a real good match. So many couples, after they've got married, then they're coming to see the counselor, um, um,
Mm.
and and you come to find out that there's no attraction there, really. I
Mm.
mean, when you think about it, I mean, once you get married, all the hoopla, and then you have sex, and then you have kids, and now what? Is life. And so
Mm.
a lot of times we're not thinking about a friendship, someone who we can live life with and companion with. We're thinking about these other things, these milestones that we want to do, like getting married, like having kids. Well, I mean, that's just a small, piece of your life together. The rest is how do you live life together. So really finding someone who's mutually attracted to you, not just your physical appearance, which is important,
Mhm.
but with who you are is very, very important. You need to have common interests and common friends. I hear stories very frequently of couples who don't have the same friends. I mean, um, how do you sustain a happy marriage if you don't have the same friends in common? And so now you may not have friends in common when you first meet each other, but you should develop common friends because that right there demonstrates that you are compatible, that your friends like you and y'all can get along. And so that says a lot about who you are and your compatibility as a couple. common interests, you like activities outside, indoors, as we were kind of talking about before. These are some rules that must exist for a healthy dating relationship. Reciprocity is another important principle in dating. In other words, if I call you, then you should call me. If I give you a gift, then you should give me a gift. If I introduce you to my family, then you should introduce me to your family. You understand what I'm saying? There's a principle of reciprocity, yes. And when that doesn't happen, then there's something wrong with this relationship. There's probably some compatibility issues going on, and so it's not anything to ignore. And a lot of times we get into this mode of trying to tell our significant other, our boyfriend or girlfriend, or our interest how to be, how they should be. And then we go into marriage doing the same thing. How does a man tell a woman how to be a woman? How does a woman tell a man how to be a man? Then we're getting into some serious areas of conflict now, because if mama didn't do a good job, you're not going to help any at all. And so
That's right.
It's important to accept who someone is. If someone shows you who they are, that's who they are.
Yes.
Don't get on a campaign now to change them into someone else. And so that once you start into that area of relationships, the reciprocity goes out the window, because now what's really happening is that person is running from you because you're telling them how they're supposed to be. So they're running from you and avoiding you. But there may be other reasons why someone's motivated to get married, and so they overlook all that, and they're just bent on it because they want a green card or whatever.
Oh yeah.
And so, it's very important for you to pay attention to that principle of reciprocity in dating. There also must be agreement. The two
Indeed.
of you must be able to be in agreement about things. And if you broke up 3, 4, 5 times before you got married, and that says a lot, doesn't it? People have conflict, but if there's constant then there's a sign that maybe this is not a good match. So it's important to recognize that conflict is not just going to resolve that easy. You have to work through it. So being in agreement, if you know how to negotiate, if you know how to communicate effectively, then you should be able to be in agreement. And that's something that should pre-exist before marriage. But in the dating process, you should learn how to get in agreement. All right, then timing. Timing is a make it or break it thing for couples. One's going off to college, one's finished and wants to go to work. And so a lot of times that creates a conflict, and one might give an ultimatum to the other one. If you have to give an ultimatum, then timing is off, and you can make or break a relationship. The relationship may not be moving along in a reciprocal way, and so that's why the timing is off. So timing is really important for couples to be able to date and get into marriage successfully. Again, I'll go to premature intimacy. So it's just important to figure out how to just be friends. It's good to have an attraction and a desire to be with one another, but it's really important to avoid that part of your relationship. It will come. If God should bless you, when you get married, you can have plenty of that. So you can wait. That's a part of practicing self-control. And if you've already gotten involved in an intimate sexual relationship with your significant other, I encourage you to stop and really allow your relationship to grow without that aspect kind of really clouding your mind, and so you can actually really prepare for marriage and not let that stand in the way. All right, that's how you can ruin a good thing. We don't want you to do that.
Right.
Here's the other one: 2 dates or less. Neil Clark Warren, the guy who made eHarmony, I wrote a book called Two Dates or Less, which I strongly recommend for anybody looking to get married. It doesn't take long to see that top doesn't fit. You know, the other day I was putting food away, and I pulled out a plastic container, and I said, "Oh, that looks right," and I put it on there, and I'm pressing and pressing and pressing, and then what happens? Nothing. It just won't go. Why? It's not the right top. So now I gotta,
Mhm.
rinse that off and put it back in there and find another one that actually fits. And so, if you're taking an hour or two trying to get that top on there, people are gonna be looking at you and like, "What's wrong with you?" And so, unfortunately, we do that a lot in our dating. We're, you keep second guessing yourself. Does this fit? Does it not fit? No, if you're questioning it, then more than likely it doesn't fit. And so, getting married is not going to solve that problem. So here's some questions. A few well chosen questions can determine if this is a fit or not. Tell me about your education. Tell me about your career, your family, politics. I'm amazed at how many couples will go on dates and have multiple dates and never talk about these very critical topics. I'm like,
Mm,
y'all just talking about politics, about the world, popular movies and things you saw. That's all great, but we got to
mm.
get some depth in these conversations. Tell me
Indeed.
about your education, your career, your family, politics, religion, hopes for the future, past
Mhm.
relationships. I don't know how many times I've asked people, "Did you talk to the ex?" No, I didn't. Okay, well, uh,
Oh dear.
uh, you know, a few
Complicated.
pivotal interviews. I've had many people tell me about what their spouse's parents told them, like
Right.
"good luck." Like, whoa, what you trying to
We
say?
all want.
But when you're in love and you're moving down that road, boy, sometimes the best advice is ignored. So
Mm.
you need to talk about these things. Find unique questions to get this information. Like, would you stand on a picket line? And that's going to produce a lot of information for you about this person.
Mhm.
So that's what I encourage you. 2 dates or less. The principle 2 dates or less is that in 2 dates or less, you should know whether this person is a keeper. All right.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I've had people in my office who've been dating for 8 years, 9 years. I'm like,
Wow.
okay, all right. You know, those long dating periods are just signs of either lack of timing issues, or a lot of times it's just a matter of ambivalence. You're just not
Mhm.
sure. Well, and the studies show that couples who live together before they get married are more likely to divorce after they get married, and
Right.
I believe the reason is because to live together means you're ambivalent. You're not sure about this person, and why are
Mhm.
you going to get into a relationship with someone you're not sure about? There's still this question mark, and so that thing, man, can plague a relationship. So being able to make a decision and being able to be sure this is what you want, what you're willing to commit to, is very, very important part. So 2 dates or less means I can ask some critical key questions to determine if I need to go on a third date, with this
Right.
person or not. And it's important for singles to say, you know what, click that X button. On a dating site, just say, X. Swipe them off. It's okay. It's all right.
Yeah.
Don't second guess your gut and your experience. If you didn't,
Right.
if it's something about that conversation that it just didn't flow, swipe left. You know what I'm saying? Let's go to the next one. Don't feel like you owe someone another date.
Mhm.
Okay, so be prepared and for that. So that's my, I think, a great principle to enter into dating with 2 dates or less. And then the next to the last one is, what are your marriage expectations? I say expect to be surprised. You're not going to get what you were expecting in
All
marriage.
right.
You're not going to see your parents' marriage. It's just you're going to get you're going to get something totally different. And so you need to brace yourself for that and prepare for that. Some people go into marriage thinking marriage will solve all their dating problems. Wrong. If you had problems before you got married, guess what you're going to have when you get married? More problems. Having children won't change our relationship. How many people have thought that? I mean, how many have actually gotten pregnant in order to try to get the person, that the children will only increase your stress. And so if this is not the right person, you're going to be more stressed. Romantic love will never fade in our relationship. Is that what you're expecting? Well, let me tell you, if you're married for 50 to 60 years, you're going to be like, okay, sometimes where's the romance? It's just, you just, I don't know. I admire those couples who are able to maintain that romantic relationship for 40, 50 years. Amen. Hallelujah. But I think that the reality is that it's peaks and valleys of that. And I think couples have to work on that, which is kind of what my next slide is all about. Time will solve most of our problems. Time does solve some problems, but not most of them. You got to be intentional about solving problems. We're not going to have any significant challenges. Oh, yes, you are. So it's important as you look forward to marriage that it's not the panacea to singlehood. It is fraught with challenges, and so you've got to be prepared for that. Last slide, finding the right mate or cultivating a healthy relationship. Maybe it's not so much about finding the right mate as it is making the best of it. Making the best of it can be the person, making the best of it with the person you get. I don't know what I said there, but anyway, you understand what I'm saying, is that yes. Sometimes we're looking for the right mate. And I think that what happens for a lot of couples after they get married, after a while, they're like, did I pick the right one? Or maybe I got the wrong one. I've heard that many times. I picked the wrong one. I should have took her. I should have took him. Well, really? I mean, do you really know what life would have been like with him or her? You know what I mean? You really don't know. It could have been worse. The bottom line is that you got to learn how to be committed to the one you picked and committed to making your marriage all that it can be. You've got to talk, learn how to communicate better, go get some therapy if you need it, read books together, go to retreats. It's just marriage is something you just have to keep working on. And so relationships, so finding the right mate is not, okay, you want to find somebody you're compatible with and who you can commit to and all that good stuff. But once you cross over that line, once you jump over the broom, now it's about real life and making this the right relationship. And so that's all I got for you guys from my side of the presentation. I'm sure you have some questions for me, so I'm ready to do my best to answer them.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for this, I would say, concise presentation. I think it's very complete. I mean, it's quite, the content is insightful, and I think the audience can agree with me. I've learned a few things. I think especially with the dating rules, there are certain things that I would say I personally will overlook, which definitely I would say would contribute into dating healthily. But I do have some questions, but I really, as I said, from the beginning, I want to make this a discussion, not only with me and you, Joe, but also with whoever is online. But I would say my first question, and I think the reason why it's my first question, it's because I often hear people talking, or young ladies talking about the scarcity of, potential mate in the church. There's not enough mates. So how do we compensate, or how do we go on about, especially if we are young Christian ladies who have, we have our values, we have our principles, and we want to pair up with someone who does share that. But then we come to realization that within our community where we should, be able to find someone suitable, we don't have that because the
Right.
numbers are not showing.
Right.
How do we go about that?
Well, that's a great question. How do you find that right person in your community when the pickings are slim in your community? Um, I think about when you decide you want a certain career. Let's say you want to be an health advocate attorney, whatever that is. And in your particular town, there's no schools that offer that. So what do? You look on the internet, you find look at the schools that do, and what do? You go to those
Just
schools. That's right, because they
sit.
have
Yes.
what I am looking for. So I think the
Hmm.
same thing the same principle when it comes to finding a life mate. You need to be willing to move. You need to be willing to
Okay.
go
Okay.
where a number of those people are. One of the things
Right.
I love about Oakwood University, which is awesome because that's where my alma mater, and it's just a plethora of options to choose from because all these are
Hmm.
Adventist, Black Adventist folks who
Right.
share a lot of my common background and interests and values, and so I think that's a great thing to do. So I don't know. I think if you're looking for a mate, you got to go where where you're going to have an opportunity, and a lot of times we can do that online.
That,
If
that's
you're in a
right.
small town, you maybe need to increase your radius to 100 miles or 200
Hmm.
miles or 1,000 miles, whatever it takes. But you got to be willing,
Yes.
to go where they are.
Right.
You're not gonna if you're looking for a good Christian spouse, you're not gonna find them in the club. I mean, you could, you could. I mean, it's possible.
I've
You
heard
shouldn't.
stories.
But you generally want to go to the church and the church activities and things.
Right.
That's where you're gonna find
Indeed.
good Christian people because that's what. So
Hmm.
you got to go where if you want to find that right person that's more compatible with you, you got to be willing to go where they are. And I've heard people say, "I'm not going to travel. I don't." I mean, okay, we're talking about a life mate here, So
Yes,
remember the
indeed.
story of Jacob and Rachel, had to travel to go get him anyway. That's
Right.
my answer to that. You got to go where the pickings are plentiful.
Okay. Well, that was a great answer. So I guess there will be a lot of tickets and flight tickets being booked the next the next months. Well, actually, my other question would be more about I would say the fact that if let's say you find someone within your community, and then it seems like everything is going well, but then I think for me, personally, one thing that I thought about in terms of scarcity, there's also the ratio between the amount of women that there is within the church and the amount of men. And there's, especially, like, I don't want to target a certain group of women, but especially in the church, I've noticed that there are certain group of women that may be more affected with the fact that they can't find the right mate. And especially with the fact that the numbers, let's say they say that statistics shows that there's one guy for for six. So my question is really about sorry, I'm trying to put my mind together. Is it more about the fact that there is this we need to come to realization that not everyone will have the same chances, because we talk about traveling and moving around, but there's also the real truth that we need to face. There's more women than men. So how do we go on about preparing our women to face I would say the reality that we don't necessarily have that, or if it's actually a problem, how can the church help to make it a little bit more accessible for our young ladies. I don't want to specifically talk, only for women, because obviously I'm a woman, so I'm concerned with that.
Right.
I understand it can be similar for men, but I don't think that men are as affected as women there. So how do we go on about the ratio and everything? I know that you've obviously talked about traveling around, but we need to address that as well.
Okay. Well, so I mean, I hear you. This is kind of a part B of the other
Yes.
question that basically, how do we, as a church, how do we educate our young people about the reality of the one man to six women ratio, whatever, and how do we address that? How do we approach that reality? Well, I think that it's important to think about the scripture. So I have several things going through my mind when you ask that question. The first thing was my friend Erica. I remember Erica told me, she said to me, Joe, we were having this kind of conversation that you're having right now, and she said, Joe, I have never seen a shortage of men.
Okay.
I thought that was quite interesting, and what you're saying, Marilise, is in the church. Isn't there a shortage of men? And certainly there is. When you look at any church service and you look around the congregation, and most of them you're going to see mostly women, and so that's the reality of that we have to face. So do we tell women, be prepared to be single? I don't know. I think that the Bible says, "Ask, and it shall be given to you. Seek, and
Hmm.
ye shall find. Knock, and the door shall be open to you. He that asketh, So it's like, what do you want? I believe God will give us the desires of our heart. So,
Hmm.
so what do you do when you don't get what you want? I mean, we don't always get everything we want. We learn how to practice self-control. We accept what our lot in life is, and we make the best out of it, out of the worst of it. But I personally believe that you should go for what you want. If you want to be
Okay.
married, go for it. I mean, I remember in college, I was majoring in theology, and you know, if 100 theology students graduated, 10 would get a job.
Hmm.
It's really slim pickings. And so, should you major in theology? Because the possibility of not getting a job, it's a risky thing. I don't know.
Hmm.
I'm a person to believe, asking it shall be given to you. I believe with God, all things are possible. If God has put this on your heart, then He will open
Right.
the door. So you need to go for it. So I had a double major, but I eventually dropped it because I wanted to finish in time. But as a backup plan, but I think you have to go for what you want,
Hmm.
and
Right.
not allow the odds to keep you. You want to be president? You want to be the prime minister?
Right.
Why not?
So you,
Go for
so
it.
you think it's more about setting your mind, um, because obviously I think so. Well, before we started our discussion, your presentation, you said something that your favorite quote is, I can do all things through Christ who strengthened me. And I think sometimes it comes to having the mindset, because we are very much stuck with the statistic and looking at the numbers. And I think sometimes that can somehow discourage us in our attempt or our journey into finding the right person. I do have a few questions. Sorry, I did not ignore you online. um, I will now ask them. Let me just have a quick look. Sorry, I'm just trying to. Okay, so I have a question. So, what advice do you give for older divorcee in the church in finding the right mate, 50 plus?
50 plus. Well, they got some websites just for you. 50 plus.
Okay, that's
um,
good.
Again, in the church, you said there is an Adventist, some Adventist singles dating sites is out there as well. And you can always check that on any of those dating services. Often that you can have a specific religion. Um, um, no, I don't. I don't know. I think you're limited by yourself. We limit
Hmm.
ourselves because we don't believe anything is possible.
Right.
We limit ourselves. And so if you feel called to find the right mate and get remarried again and enjoy a healthy, happy marriage, then prepare yourself for it.
Hmm.
I remember my all of the clothes in my closet were really tired, and I was like, you know what, it's time for something new. So I had heard someone say, well, you want new clothes, you need to clean out the old ones. So I started taking stuff out and giving stuff to Goodwill, and now I look in my closet and it's fresh, you know. So
Right.
what do you want? So
Hmm.
begin preparing yourself for that. Um, you know,
Okay.
so I don't know what that means, but if you want, Mr. Muscle Man, maybe you need to become Miss Muscle Man, Muscle Woman.
Yeah.
Start working on whatever it is you want. I don't
Okay.
no, there's no, you're out,
Right.
count it. You're out, count. Don't count yourself out. I don't care if you're
Mhm.
75. I had a cousin. She got married when she was 70 for the first time.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's something.
Wow. That's a goal. That's a goal. Well, we've got another question. Yes. So, sorry, I have to multitask. Can true physical attraction grow over time?
Can true physical attraction grow? Yes, absolutely. It could die as well. Yes.
Yeah.
So there are people who get married because they were told to get married. Planned marriages or arranged marriages they call them. In a lot of cultures that's how it works. Well, I mean, you may not be physically attracted to that person.
Mhm.
It's so funny. We watched this show. What's that? So Married at First Sight. These couples get together and like, oh, hi. ah,
Yes.
you may not be attracted, but I think that there are some building blocks of attraction
Right.
that really. So, I have this theory. I have this theory that people with similar physical features are attracted to each other. You know, facial structure. You look at people and you say, "Y'all been together so long, you look just alike." Well,
Yes.
they
That's right.
probably had some common features in the first place. We tend to be attracted to people who are like us. Okay, that's
Mm.
normal, and I think that's important to keep in mind. And so, if you are not so physically attracted to someone, if you guys enjoy reading books together, if you all enjoy watching movies together, you enjoy hiking and doing things together, you enjoy shopping or whatever it is, you enjoy church and spreading the gospel, whatever it is you enjoy doing together, I find that those are the building blocks of
Hmm.
physical attraction because you're attracted to someone you enjoy being with. And I think a lot of times we don't understand that because that's why sex before marriage is so dangerous because you're enjoying this physical attraction, but you're not really
Right.
developing the building blocks of true
Hmm.
attraction.
Hmm.
Okay, and that's what happens to a lot of couples. They get married and they're not having sex anymore
Right.
because they don't. That's all they had, and that's not a
Hmm.
foundation for a healthy
Hmm.
relationship. Sex, I mean, sex should be the outgrowth of a healthy relationship. And so, yes, physical attraction
Right.
can die. I've heard many people say, I can't even
Hmm.
stand to look at them anymore. So the physical attraction can go away if you don't have the common building blocks of attraction.
Right. Okay. My other question, right. So I know there's a few questions coming in, but I do have some that I have prepared. And also listening to your presentation, I do have some questions that have come up to my mind. So when you basically, presented about being or preparing to be the right partner for marriage, are you ready for marriage? Um, there may be some cases where someone, I would say, have worked extensively on themselves and they are indeed a good potential candidate for marriage. However, they might go on, on about with their life. 30, 40 years might have passed, and then they still haven't found that right person. And can you probably give us some insight about how a single person can compensate for the loss of that dream, the loss of, of that probably intimacy that they've longed for. I'm not talking about just the intimacy on the physical level, but I'm talking about the emotional intimacy, because the single life can be quite lonely. So if you have lived there for quite a long time in your single life, how do you compensate for that?
Okay. How do you compensate for your single? So ask it one more time. I'm not quite sure
Yes, sorry.
I
So
got it.
I'll just ask the question because I did diverge a little bit into different things. So how does a single person compensate for the loss of that dream of wanting to be married and not seeing it coming to
Well,
realization?
a dream is only a loss when you give up on your dream.
All right. Okay. Okay. So you'd say that someone who is longing, who is basically in never been married, for example, who has been single for quite a while, that obviously they need to keep the hope, because we are human, I guess, and it's not easy
Right. Right.
sometimes to see things happening around us, and the years are passing by, and I guess dealing with the emotional emptiness, I would say, because obviously from what you've presented, you say that a single person is very content. And I do like the sound of it, but sometimes I do think as well that
Yeah.
married people forget that single people also long for
Right.
that
Right.
that intimacy. They long
Yeah.
for that
Right.
emotional
And
attachment.
single people often forget that married people often long for their singlehood.
Right. Okay. Okay. So it's
You know,
50-50
so
basically.
learning to be content. Paul said, "I've learned the best place to be is to be
Right.
content." And so I don't know.
Okay.
I say, I understand the need for physical intimacy. Um, I don't know. I think it's just a matter of practicing self control with God's help.
Right.
You really have to have your mind on the right things. Maybe you need to set some big goals for yourself, and it's
Right.
time for you to immerse yourself in reaching a big goal, a book you wanted to write, or an album you want to produce. And then
Okay.
I promise you, once you're engaged in that task, you will forget about your loneliness and your need for intimacy,
Right.
because you're so engaged
Mm-hmm.
in that. And it's amazing how, in the midst of pursuit of our dreams and our goals, guess what shows up right but while we're not even looking? Mr. Right.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So just live your life
All
and
right.
let God bring that person to your life. Let God fulfill those needs, those urges. You know, try not to stoke them. Watch
Mm-hmm.
what you're watching on TV and what you're reading, and
Exactly.
sometimes we have
Yes.
to put that part of us on hold. Even in
Mm-hmm.
marriage, when you have that baby and you gotta put it on hold. We have to
Mm-hmm.
practice self control, and we have to seek God
Mm-hmm.
to fulfill us and our needs. And we have needs. You're absolutely correct. And we just have to give it to the Lord and ask Him to help us, because compromise is not the answer. And so often we find ourselves, finding that friend with benefits, just to take care of those needs. That's not the way to go. I mean, because it's temporarily satisfying, and long term it's not.
Right.
So I don't know. There's no easy way. I mean, life is hard for all of us, but God is good, and we have to trust Him through the challenges of life.
Indeed. Indeed. Yes. I think um, this is a good response. And I do agree with that. I think definitely having something on of your own and not remaining in that constant where is my partner mindset is quite vital for your survival throughout singleness, if I should say. Right, I'm conscious of time, and I know that we've got some incoming questions as well. So I'm just gonna flip to the chat box. Right. What can the church and ministers do to evangelize men in our community? So I'm not quite sure if this is related to somehow enabling them to come to our community and therefore give more prospect for finding a mate. I'm not quite sure what's that question, but if you find some sort of reflection on it, please go ahead.
Okay, ask it again.
So yeah, sure. Sorry, I'm just, okay. So what can the church and ministers do to evangelize men in our community?
Wow. Well, how do you evangelize men? Well, you go where men are. I mean, it's the same principle. You go where men are. You talk about topics that are concerning men. You evangelize them at the gym. You evangelize them on the creek side fishing. You evangelize men at their jobs. I mean, wherever you find where men are is where you go. The topics of your presentation. So what are some topics that men are interested in? You ask the questions. You survey them. What are you guys, interested in? So, Claudia, you got some ideas?
Well, I'm thinking, yeah, men should be evangelized for this purpose.
Right. And so we have a bunch of women, oftentimes, in our congregations. I mean, men are interested in women.
Right.
So, there's you just have to be creative. You got to be prayerful. You got to ask God to lead you. But asking questions, asking men, what interests them, I think is really, really important.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got more, it's not really questions, I've got more comments. So one of the comment is the problem for women is the biological clock. Many women want children, which means there is added pressure. So this is not really a question, but I guess, do you think, I'm going to try to turn it into a question. Do you think for women, finding a partner is harder because we have that biological clock?
Everybody has a biological clock.
Okay.
Not just women. Like you said, we all have needs, and so again, we can't have everything we can't have everything we want right now, but we can be in pursuit of our goals. And so if your clock is ticking and you think it's time, you're getting 30, 35, 36, 37, you know what I mean? You're like, okay,
Yes.
these eggs are getting old here, um, then it's time to really begin to ask the question, well, what is there some things I need to do? Do I need to relocate? Do I need to, what do I need to do to make myself more attractive, more appealing?
Right.
I don't know. I mean, maybe, that's something you ask God about. But at the end of the day,
Okay.
you really have to, allow God to have His way in your life. And so, I encourage you to just trust Him, but keep working on your goals. It's very very important.
Right.
Keep working on your goals.
Amen, indeed. One of the question, I have a question, another question for you. So not necessarily from our chat box, but what are the myths? Because I can hear a lot of myth about the right person. Um, because sometimes we go on about saying that God has someone specific for you, but then you also hear people saying that you know, it's almost like it was pick and choose. So where do we draw the line between someone that we've just literally appeared to like and, you know, paired it together, and the myth about God having a specific mate for you? Can multiple people be a mate for you, or is God has, you know, from the start um place that particular person for you? So yeah.
Right. Well, I can't speak for God, but in my opinion, I think that I mean it's a great question. Is there just one person for you, or are there many that you could actually mate with? I believe that there are many that you can mate with. I believe that
Okay.
you can have a great relationship with any number of people. There are some basic principles, and this is what I base my work on with couples who aren't getting along, who are really frustrated with each other. If you develop the skills that healthy couples have, if you do the things that happy couples do, you will have a happy marriage. I really believe that, and I've seen it over and over again. And so I don't think there's any one person
Right.
that's just for you. If you do the right things, you can have a fruitful and prosperous relationship with anybody. I really believe that.
Right.
Um, so I mean that I do believe though God should be in it. Don't just pick somebody off the
Mm-hmm.
street. Oh, okay, next train coming. Here we go. No, I think you should be careful and mindful
Right.
and prayerful when selecting someone. But sometimes we are too picky. Sometimes we are,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's just something really to pray about. Because
Right.
if you have a friend, I mean, shoot, the best person to marry is your friend.
Mm, yes. Yes. I agree with that. I think for me, it's all to do with I th- I mean, I'll just gonna give a little bit of reflection, especially when it comes to education. Um, I personally think that I wish that I was taught to cultivate healthy relationship with male, because I come from a Caribbean background, and I think sometimes it was quite difficult for me to create genuine friendship with male. Um, and therefore, later in life, that can cause an issue because you start to obviously think about, you know, being with a partner, but then automatically your mind think, oh, if I'm being friend with a guy, straight away somehow you need to seek for something romantic. And I think for me it's really about education. I think also the church should encourage women to you know, to create these friendships, because I believe that friendship is definitely one of the foundation for a healthy you know, later on relationship. But we are not often taught, especially with certain culture, we are not often taught that we can indeed have good
Right.
friends, male friends. And I think that's, for me, that's also one part of the issue, because I wish that I had created more bonds with Mel that
Right.
could potentially become mates
It's not
after.
too late.
Not too late. No, not too late. Not too late indeed. Right. So I'm just going to dive into the chat again because I do think that we've got some incoming questions. Um, okay. So we've got not so much questions. So if you have questions, can you please formulate them into questions rather than comments? Because that would be a little bit easier for Joe to answer. So we have women we should start fostering if we want to have kids. Okay.
Hmm.
So that's one of the comments. What do you think about that? Maybe you can.
Right.
comment on
Right.
that?
Um, I mean, so many children need parents. They need a home, a loving
Hmm.
adult in their life. I mean, yeah, definitely. If you feel called to foster a child, why not? Adopt a child. I mean, I've known many people who do that. Um, just just recognize that once you have a child, um, that does present something that potential suitor would have to accept and deal with.
Right.
But if they love you, they're going to love your children as well.
Hmm.
Um, but no, I don't. I mean, if that's what you feel God leading you to do, and a child can meet some of those needs. And I mean, for a lot of women, once once they have children, they don't need no more romance. God bless them. But anyway, so that may be a way to get that need met, and it is to having someone close to you is having a child.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. What do you think about the role married couples should play into, I would say, helping singles into finding someone?
Right.
Because I think the married and the singles are quite separated, and I think they should not
Right.
personally. Because I think two single, healthy people make a wonderful married couple. Therefore, they should really be involved into the life of singles.
Right.
What do you think of how married people can actually help singles into that finding that right mate?
Yeah.
How can they contribute?
I think married couples can play a critical role in helping singles find the right mate. In fact, some of the best marriages are hookups. Where your friends, your married couples or whatever have introduced you. They have a certain vision, a certain sight that might be very helpful
Hmm.
in the situation. So yeah, just being mindful of the singles, befriending singles. You have nieces and nephews and brothers and sisters who are younger who are single. Look out for them. Find pick. Introduce them to other people. Have your eye open for them. Carmen Thomas and I, we were working on a retreat idea called Third Wheel Weekend, and I thought it was a great idea that Carmen had, where married couples bring a single tag along with them, and so it's not only a marriage
Hmm.
retreat but a singles
Right.
retreat as well, and so opportunity to kind of meet some new people. Unfortunately, COVID-19 has just chopped that bad boy up. But at any rate,
Indeed.
yes, I think couples can do a lot to
Okay.
help singles find mates. And again, church activities. Used to be churches had socials and stuff like that. They don't see that
Hmm.
stuff much anymore. And so those are opportunities to meet people. But churches can do movie night
Right.
and all kind of stuff. And even now, even online, there are things that a church can do like this. But there are ways you got to create rooms for people to chat and
Right.
develop relationships. So
Indeed.
it's more like Sabbath school, branch Sabbath school, all those kinds of concepts are ways to get people in a close circle where they can actually communicate. That's how you make friends. That's how marriages happen. So yeah.
Like grab those two
Mm. All
refreshers.
right. Okay. One other question I had is mainly about the issue of finding someone outside of your faith, and I think
Mm-hmm.
that's one of the issue that needs to be addressed here.
Right.
I think we struggle, especially within the church, with that idea of potentially finding a mate outside of our faith. Per se, Seventh Day Adventist faith.
Mm-hmm.
How should we go on about that, especially if you're a single person?
Right. Right. Well, I mean, finding someone outside your faith is a very real reality and possibility. You're going to meet all kinds of people, at work, wherever you are, and so the likelihood of actually dating someone who is outside your faith is very high. Um, but I think that for all practical purposes, you mating up with someone who has a common religious beliefs and background is really the best case scenario. We should be careful about being unequally yoked, as Scripture refers to, um, because when you're with someone who doesn't have the same beliefs as you, there's room for conflict. over those things, because your values and your beliefs are so critical to your life and enjoying your life and enjoying your relationship. So I just strongly encourage you to date. And you marry who you date. You marry who you date. So if you're
True.
dating non-Adventist, then you're going to marry a non-Adventist. And so, and don't, I mean, yeah, I guess you can convert them, convert them. Um,
Yeah.
and that's fine. It's beautiful, but you can't bank on it. You need to accept a person for who they are, and you shouldn't be trying to lean on them, about stop eating pork or whatever, you know.
Hmm.
Um, but lots of people are married today happily, and they married a non-Adventist, who are both are in the church now, or not.
Okay.
So I'm not going to say you can't, you shouldn't, but it's discouraged. I would encourage you to, develop a friendship and let that person know, you know, one of my values is to marry someone
Right.
who shares my beliefs. And so, if you would look into it for me, so maybe we could, But again, it's hard. A lot of people bait and switch. It's a tough one, boy.
Indeed.
But
Indeed. Indeed.
go
Yeah.
ahead. Mm-hmm.
It's quite difficult because I think you obviously the person can kind of like change down the line, and I would not say necessarily because they don't share the same faith. It can also happen if you, let's say, find a partner within the church, and then few years down the line they are not so much the right mate anymore. I think there's also this reality that, let's say, for 10 years, you might just, be with someone who you believe that was the right mate. And then people change and they're not so much the right mate. And you may not have found the red flags in the beginning. And so it's a difficult, tricky situation. That's why the term right mate can sometimes be controversial, because we know that people change. So should we really say, or talk here about being with the right mate, or, yeah, sorry, I'm
Right,
not trying
right,
to put you in a position where
right. Well, I had spoken of that earlier. Sometimes maybe it's not so much about being the right mate as
being the right, that's right.
making the best of the mate you got. So
That's it.
I don't know. I think that you're absolutely correct. But I'll fall back on the principle that if you do the things that happy couples do, you will have a happy marriage. And I think what
Right.
happens for so many couples, the couples who come up 10 years down the road and they're now looking at divorce, they didn't do some things. They didn't
Okay.
keep doing the things that they did to get married. They
Hmm.
stopped spending
Right.
time together. They stopped hanging out. They stopped enjoying each other's company. And that's how marriages go south. And I found
Right.
couples who restart those things, start doing those things you used to do. Like I said to you, it's not too late to make friends. If
Right.
you can
Okay.
even now begin to rebuild that friendship with your spouse, you can rejuvenate
Hmm.
the love and the passion and the desire for one another again. I stand on that. I really do. So yes, people do switch, people do change, people do, you know, go down different roads. They grow apart, but that's only
Hmm.
because you guys didn't do what you're supposed to do.
All
I'd say
right.
9 times out of 10, people do make
Out of 10.
choices,
Okay.
and people do make choices, and they go a different
All right.
direction, and that's true. And sometimes divorce is the best case scenario,
Right.
unfortunately for some. But I can say that relationships are, are if you follow certain principles, you can have a happy and successful marriage with anybody, in my opinion.
That's great.
Uh,
Okay. So yeah, I can get the sense that you have to be very strategic. You have to have a plan in place if you want to be successful, and I believe that applies, in everything. Yeah. I would like to know a little bit more about your book right now because I'm conscious of time and I did say that I do want to hear a little bit more about your book. So, Sizzle Mindset, the 7 secrets um, for a healthy and happy marriage. Is that
Yes,
correct?
to keep the
All
passion
right.
alive in your marriage. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Well, I wrote that book basically outgrowth of my practice with couples, identifying the things that happy couples do to keep the passion alive
Okay.
in their marriage. And so it kind of traces a couple experience who's dealing with pornography through the book, and just highlights how important these 7 principles are. And the first one is be committed. The second one, be flexible. Third one, be available. And you have to read the book to get the rest of them. But it's a very,
Right.
very insightful book about what you have to do to have a healthy and fulfilling marriage and a healthy and fulfilling sex life in your marriage to do those things. And that I use
Okay.
those principles today in my program working with couples, and I help them to learn to implement these principles in their lives. And you said strategic. It's a strategy. You do these things, and voila, you have a wonderful relationship. So it's really
Okay.
not brain surgery. It's pretty simple, but it can be complex. People do develop bad habits, have bad habits, and hang-ups that have to
Hmm.
be addressed. But these 7 principles kind of cut through those things. And regardless of your hang-ups, regardless of your habits, regardless of your beliefs, if you can do these things, you can have a happy and successful marriage.
Okay. That's great. And is your book available on which platform?
Yeah, you can get my book. It's Amazon. It's on all
Okay.
over wherever should be able to find it. And of course, you can get it on my site, Sizzle Mind. If you go to sizzlemindset.com, you can download
Okay.
my 7 principles. And I have a blueprint that you can download for free. And of course, you can keep on going and get my book and get a
All
digital
right.
copy of that on my website, sizzlemindset.com. Absolutely.
Okay.
And I
That's
I would
great.
I would advise singles to read the book. You know why not?
You read the book.
Because you're getting prepared for marriage, and that's really the mind. You got to have the right mindset. And if you can find someone who has a similar mindset, man, you guys are good to go.
Awesome. It's noted. Yes. And do you have any more work, collaboration that you're currently working on?
uh, well, I was working on a collaboration to do that marriage retreat slash singles retreat, but at this point, not really doing too much collaboration. Just trying
Okay.
to. I'm promoting. I have a new program for couples, Sizzling Hot Marriage Coaching program I'm doing. So I'm working to get couples into that program. So that's basically what I'm doing. Also working on my album coming out here soon. So
Lovely.
my projects are solo right now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's great that obviously that you've put into like a nice material, tips and secrets for married couples, but as you mentioned as well, for people who are looking into getting married. I think definitely I would encourage everyone who is listening and watching to go and get the book, read about it, and make sure that you take notes as well. And I think, to be honest, your presentation was so concise, and I think it did had everything really that I wanted to address this evening. I'm conscious of time. Unfortunately, I think we are kind of getting close to the end. But I think for us, especially for single people, what would be your advice, your last advice for anyone who's looking forward to finding that person? What would be your tips, the material that we can walk away with from your presentation?
Mhm. Well, ultimately, enjoy your life. Uh,
Okay.
don't don't wait or Mr. Right or Miss Right to enjoy your life, be happy, live a life free from guilt, and I would, forgive yourself for your past mistakes and move on and enjoy your life, and hopefully, if that's your desire to get married, along the way, you can find someone who will enjoy your life with you. But ultimately,
Right.
you need to be enjoying your life, and they need to be enjoying their life. You don't need to be saving them; they'll need to be saving you. So that when y'all find
True.
together, you can be whole and just be able to walk together in companionship, continuing to enjoy your lives together. So that's
Right.
that's my advice to all the singles. Enjoy your life.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. It's about enjoying your life and preparing to being that right partner as well. Um, Thank you so much, Joe.
You're
I
welcome.
think we are coming to, unfortunately, the end of our program. But I personally definitely can say that I have learned, and I have been
Thank you, Paula.
reminded and refreshed, definitely about how to find the right partner. It can be a quite daunting journey,
Hmm.
but we can do all things for Christ, and especially having that mindset will definitely lead us to the desires of our heart.
Hmm.
I am just making sure that I have not left out anyone in the chat box. So if you have any more questions that I've probably missed out, please let me know. I cannot see anything. All right, thank you. So yeah, thank you for the presentation. We've got a few people thanking you, Joe,
Well, thank you.
online. So
Glad I
thank
could
you
be
guys for joining us.
here today. Awesome. Wish I could be with
Okay.
you guys in England. That'd be awesome.
Well, I think definitely after the pandemic, the I mean everything will be reopened, so it would be nice
Yeah,
to have some of our presenters that we've seen online to come and
that'd be
visit,
great. That'd be
and
great.
maybe who knows, some, as I said in the beginning, I would love to go and visit Huntsville,
Absolutely.
Alabama at some point.
Absolutely. Come to the
So
great Oakwood University.
yes, I would love to, so I'll be booking my ticket.
All right. All right.
All right. Well, guys, thank you so much. Thank you very much for being with us. But again, a great, great, great thank you to Joe for your presentation. And I guess I have my cue from Parkside Community Church to then come to the end of that presentation. Parkside.
Hi, thank you, Anne-Marie. Thank you, Joe, for this wonderful program this afternoon. I hope that people felt that there were some gems that they could take away, and hopefully revisit in the book that Joe has out. And we really do appreciate the fact, Joe, that you've taken time out of your busy schedule to come with us, to spend today with us. And we wish you all the best in the future, and we would love to collaborate again in the future at some point.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So,
Definitely
so
my privilege and my joy to do so.
thank you. Thank you. It's been really nice. Are you able to stop and chat if people want to have a word with you offline, or do you have to rush off?
No, I'm I'm fine. I think my wife's about to go down and cook some lunch, right? Amen. Hallelujah. But I'm good for the next couple few minutes. We can answer any questions live. Sure.
Okay, so for those of you who would like to ask Joe questions offline, we stopped the video, so feel free to do so. Yes, and once again, Joe, thank you, and we will be in contact. And
Sure.
thank you, Emily. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. All right.
Right.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, well, thank you. Bye bye, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day. God
Right.
bless.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
All right. Bye. Take care.
See Helen and Marcia. Hi, Helen. Hi, Marcia.